Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Lee, co-founder of the Chinese American Heritage Foundation. CAHF promotes the recognition, appreciation, and celebration of historical contribution made to the United States by citizens of Chinese heritage. Together, our stories will be shared and our voices amplified. Welcome to day 27 of our 31 days of webinars celebrating AAPI Heritage Month. Today, our topic is Asian American in Sports, moderated by Brian Yang. He is an actor and producer whose producing credits include Late Life, the Golden Horse Best Documentary Award nominated feature on former New York Yankees pitcher Chin Ming Wan, the Jeremy Lin documentary Linsanity, which premiered at Sunday's Film Festival, Shanghai International Film Festival awarding-winning biopic Another Shot, on former NBA player Stephon Marbury's life in China, I Can, I Will, I Did, starring Tony Award nominee Mike Feist, and Snakehead, which recently premiered at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. Brian has also produced documentary specials for ESPN and Fox Sports. As an actor, his film credit includes Saving Face, The Jay Pendant, and The Little Prince, a short film now available on Disney Plus as part of the inaugural Launchpad program, and TV credits include The Path, Westworld, Blacklist, Shanghai Rush, and Hawaii Five-0, on which he played the lab tech Charlie Fong for 5 seasons. And I have been watching all 5 seasons, and he is very good in it. So Brian will be introducing our 3 amazing panelists this evening. During the panel discussion, if you have any questions, please type in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Without further ado, let me present you Brian Yang.
Thank you, Esther. Hi, everyone out there. It's an honor to be here today hosting this edition of AAPI Talks in honor of the AAPI Heritage Month, Asians in Sports. I am a huge sport nut, all aspects of it, from playing when we used to play basketball and recreate pre-pandemic, things like that, to watching and fortunately finding I guess some footing and producing content around sports as a career, around sports stories and such. So I wanted to just dive in. We have 3 esteemed guests today from all different walks of the sporting life. We have a Olympic hopeful snowboarder, Terra Traub, who is dialing in. Actually, I don't know, Terra, where you are in this world, but Terra, I don't know if you're supposed to come in now or later, but Terra Traub, we have, there she is. We have Marshall Cho, who is dialing in from Portland, Oregon. Marshall, who happens to be an old friend of mine. I used to play hoops with him. This man can shoot like nobody's business. One of the best pure 3-point shooters I've ever seen, jump shooters, and just an all-around awesome human being. And then we have finally, last but not least, Carrie Chao, former ESPN anchor, current contributing journalist to The Undefeated, and actually a new role at Forbes with, right? I think I got that right, Carrie. Sorry. I'll let you explain what you do in a minute. And you're dialing in from, are you still in Virginia?
Yep, right outside of DC.
Okay, great. And I've known Carrie as well for a number of years, back when he was at Bristol, Connecticut, headquarters at ESPN. So I really condensed each of your bios because in the interest of time, I have all your bios in front of me, but I wanted to keep this casual, and folks can, they'll get to know you over the course of this hour, or they can really, Google you or stalk you if they want to know more. And we'll talk more about what you guys do and your backgrounds as we go, I'm sure. So thank you all for jumping in here. As I was saying in the green room, is that what we call it before you go on? I don't normally host panels and such. Carrie is the professional here, so we're sort of turning the tables, and so we'll see how this goes. But I wanted to just kick this off, and I guess in no particular order, but I'll just lob it over to Terra, to you first, and then Terra, Marshall, Carrie. Why don't we go in that order, just for sake of ease? In your own words, tell us about yourselves, in terms of like where you grew up, what your upbringings were like, and how you picked your chosen fields. So Terra, why don't you go first?
Cool. Thanks, Brian. I grew up in Taiwan, and I spent 13 years there before moving to the States. I was actually very lucky. My parents were like, I see them as unicorns. They were so supportive of everything that I wanted to do. And I wanted to do a lot of stuff. So I took a bunch of like dance classes, music classes, and I got into figure skating, and that's why I moved to the States. And then after figure skating, I got into snowboarding, and it's been amazing. It's been an incredible journey. I have a lot of fondness for Taiwan growing up there. And I have a lot of great memories, a lot of great like nostalgia, and I feel a deep connection to my country. What was the second part of that? Like what I do?
Yeah, exactly. What I already mentioned that you're a professional snowboarder, and I guess how did you fall into that? So interesting.
Especially outside of from figure skating, I'm really curious.
Yeah. So I stopped figure skating in high school, and then in between high school and college, I took a gap year. And I just like looked up like what was like the coolest place to go spend a gap year, or like coolest thing to do. And I found this program for snowboarding in Canada where you can like be licensed to be an instructor. And it was just like, I was 18 when I started. And since then I just like eat, breathe, live everything with snowboarding. I got into Berklee School of Music in Boston at the kind of the same time that I found snowboarding. And like literally papered all my walls in my apartment in Boston with just like murals of like snow in the mountains. And instead of textbooks, I had like snowboard magazines in my bag. So I left school in 2014 and just like pursued snowboarding full time. But
Wait, time out.
Yeah.
So you're a professional snowboarder and a student at the Berklee School of Music, which is like the best music school in the United States.
Yeah,
right?
I'm actually, yes. So I'm rehabbing from a knee surgery right now, and I just started my first week of summer term again. I'm like, because what else are you gonna do while you're rehabbing?
Wow. And as I understand, you're actually, I mean, I'm not aware of the injury or where you are in the recovery process, but you were on track to, I know you were pursuing the Olympic dream to represent Taiwan. Is that right? Like what is that
totally.
like, and where are you at in that process?
So I'm about 9-10 weeks out of surgery. And I've competed in like 3 out of the 6 qualifiers for next year. So it kind of depends on like if like my knee surgery recovery should put me back on snow, like hopefully by December, a little bit before, so I could still make the last 2 qualifiers and secure a spot for Taiwan. And that's what I'm hoping for right now. And yeah, I worked so hard for it for the past like decade. So I think it'd be amazing to represent Taiwan and bring, connect the two with like my culture. And Taiwan's never sent like winter female Olympian to the Winter Games before. So it'd be really cool to bring some of that like attention, energy, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like experience to the Taiwanese people.
Representation.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You would seriously be trailblazing by doing that. So good luck on that journey. That's amazing.
Thank
And
you.
I guess you know, you have music to fall back on. I don't even know if that's the right way to open receiver here in the upper right hand corner. So all right, Marshall, why don't you take the mic?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to this. Just it's kind of nice, just the four of us. I can kind of learn a little bit. I'm, you know, like Terra, I was born outside of the U.S. I was born and raised in South Korea. Came to the States when I was 10 years old, back in 1986, Springfield, Oregon, of all places. I grew up playing basketball on the blacktop, which is something that, you know, I just came from a practice, actually. So I cut out practice an hour early from my current high school job at Lake Oswego High School. Our claim to fame is that Kevin Love played here many years ago. But this is my 6th year. I'm trying to carry on the tradition and the standard that he set. But yeah, I've been a coach since 2004. I joined the Teach for America program back in 2000 after college, graduating from University of Oregon. You asked if you picked the field or the field picked you. I definitely, and you and I got to know each other when I was still hooping and playing a little bit, but I definitely feel like the coaching profession chose me. So, you know, I've stumbled onto it. Not quite like Terra, where, you know, I did the reverse gap year, which basically means I did the first 4 years of college and then I took an extra 5th year because I was an accounting major. So I took my gap year at the end. But that's when I really realized that I didn't want to be an accountant. I didn't want to be, no offense to anybody, pushing paper or sitting in front of a, you know, desktop all day. But I just knew that for me, I couldn't do it. So I'm up on my feet all the time, engaging with people, engaging with young people. Hopefully that's keeping me young. But it's a profession that's been so rewarding. And in my own way, like Terra, I want to be, you know, representing just a small pocket of, you know, Asian American coaches out there. And I think the other piece of it is not only representing, but excelling, that I have aspirations to do something at the highest level, that I'm not settling just to be, I don't know, face in the crowd, although there's 4 faces here, but, you know, I want somebody to look up. I think it's just like what Terra, if, you know, Terra, like I see the crutches. I tore my ACL my senior year. Like I know what that feels like. Like I look at you and I go, I have an 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who's super athletic, like, you know, and I can't get her to play basketball and she might be a snowboarder, you know, like, so even though, you know, you're Taiwanese, I'm Korean, but like I can say, hey, see, look at that face right there. That resembles you a little bit. And so I want somebody to look at me and say, like, if I want to be a high school basketball coach and impact lives, what's wrong with that? You know, and be able to tell this testimony that really makes this next generation of parents to realize that we have a duty to have impact in any pocket that we're placed in.
Marshall, you're being humble, man. You got NBA. You've coached some NBA players, bro. Come on, let's hype you up here.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, and you know, usually I'm 5'8". I'm vertically challenged. So like Brian said, that's why I had to shoot well. But yeah, I coached anywhere from James Wiseman to Zion Williamson to, you know, Darius Garland, who's slightly taller than me, to just your average high school players, you know. And I think especially during the last 14 months during the pandemic, I realized that our young people are more fragile and more resilient than we recognize. And so it's been an interesting experiment in terms of treating them just like I would an NBA player or a USA basketball player, that whoever is right in front of me is the most important, you know, person that I am engaging with. And that's you guys for the next hour.
So I want to come back to you, Marshall, about the coaching.
Wait, we're not skipping on the Carrie. We're not gonna get to him. Like, I want to hear about his Bruce Lee article, and
we could skip me.
Carrie's gonna just end up interviewing me and Terra. Like, it's gonna be a 2-on-2 here. It's like playing pickup basketball.
Honestly, right?
I know.
Pick and pop, pick and roll. Yeah.
There's no ego here.
Yeah, Brian,
Okay.
go ahead and take a few, man. Take a
Yeah.
couple. I got
Thank you.
questions
Let me
like
just shut
galore
this
for
off.
Taylor
All
and
right.
Marshall.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
All right. So, okay, go ahead, Carrie. Ball's
Oh,
past
good.
you.
Thank God.
Thanks,
Okay,
yo,
next.
smooth. Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California. I'm Chinese American. I'm first generation born in my family in the States. And what everybody is here is saying is like that representation means the world to me growing up because unlike Terra, unlike Marshall, y'all, I had some major self-identity issues. Like I from outwardly, people would say like I would say like, oh yeah, I love being Chinese, but inwardly, like I knew that I did not. I had a lot of self-hate. I grew up in what is now a very diverse area in Orange County, but when I was growing up, I was one of the few Asian Americans, and then a lot of the Asian Americans that were in my circle, I didn't connect with because we had different interests or whatnot, but also because I was really fighting against all these stereotypes. And one of the things that I think many people on this call have or watching this may feel like when you are a minority, you want to be included so bad, you just want to assimilate. And for me, that was shunning all this culture. And so when it was a very long journey for me to become comfortable with who I was, and that was in college. And then afterwards, I fell into journalism. I always knew I liked to write, but then I fell into broadcast journalism. And through random twists and turns, how TV journalism works, I started my career behind the scenes in Los Angeles, ended up working in Casper, Wyoming. So real quick thing, there's 210 total TV markets in the country. New York is the biggest. 210 is the smallest. Wyoming was 197. That's like it's small and I don't want to say terrible because that's a very subjective term, but like it does not get much smaller than that. And I was like, man, nobody else wants me. Like this is where I got to go. So I went to Wyoming. It was incredible. And then when I was in Wyoming, then I moved to Alabama. And in both those places, being the only Asian American around, really, it became this huge point of pride for me to represent now like my culture in a better way and to stop shunning all the things that I had shunned for a long time. And that like was a gradual process. And then from there, working my way up, eventually I got the call to go to ESPN, one of the first Chinese Americans to ever anchor SportsCenter. I take that with pride. Sometimes people are like, that's really specific, but I'm like, whatever, that's mine. I take that. So when I was at ESPN, and at that point, that's when I ended up meeting Brian, and I started the platform. When you have people reaching out to you and saying like, yo, this matters. You just being there, talking about this stuff, being you, this matters. And then you just really want to like, you want to get that megaphone, right? And you want to like expand that as much as you possibly can. And so from ESPN, from SportsCenter, that's when I realized I really want to talk about race even more. I want to get really explicit about race. And that's why I ended up shifting over to the Undefeated, which I freelance for. And I talk a lot about, I try to be raw and real. And I tell like everybody about the psychological racial scars of my own, because I've noticed like that's what connects and that's where people can really relate to. And if they haven't, I just don't want people to grow up the same way I did, shunning themselves, right? Not being able to embrace their true authentic self. And I think that's been a real interesting journey. And I think that's what's so amazing about like the people on this, like every one of like y'all are trailblazers and pioneers, and all that representation means so much to the next generation growing up and watching that. And so that's why I'm thrilled to be a part of this.
Thank you, Carrie. I mean, I just wanted to, take a second to, I know everyone on this call, you wake up, you don't think twice, you do what you do. You've been grinding your whole life, the better part of your lives. And you don't necessarily wake up and go, I mean, maybe you do, but you don't necessarily, I'm imagining it's not like I'm Asian, I'm going to go do this. Like you do what you do. But when you step outside of yourself and you realize that, whether it's the people watching this or the people that were watching you on SportsCenter, Carrie, the people, Marshall, when you're like going up and down the sidelines in this packed high school gym, or, when you were at Portland State, however many years ago that was, but right before you started your job where you are now. and Terra, same goes to you. Like, you guys are all these beacons, right? There's because you've chosen this industry and this walk of life that is lesser taken by Asian Americans. Let's face it, you know. And so I just want to, you know, I guess as they say, give you guys all your flowers for, you know, I know you don't want it necessarily. This is not why you do what you do, and you're just grinding, trying to make your way in this world. But it truly is a tremendous achievement, just having chosen this and for accomplishing what you guys have. So, you know, this panel about Asians in sports, like 20 years ago would have never existed, right? I mean, first of all, Zoom didn't exist, but like what I'm saying is like there's so few people, and more we're seeing people come into this field, and it's because of everyone here, you know. So again, I'm not very good at giving flowers, but you know, I'm gonna try to give as many as I can today. So so appreciate it while you can, guys. So the next question, going back to you, Terra, why don't you take this to kick off? You know, you kind of mentioned this already. You had very supportive families, you know, in your corner, which is a very supportive family, which is amazing. But could you dive into that a little bit more? Because typically this industry of sport that we've all chosen on one level or another is not something that's necessarily valued by Asian culture, you know, in terms of choosing it as a career. It's like, sure, play sports after school as a hobby. You can watch basketball on the weekends, you know, after you do your homework, this, that, the other thing. But everyone here made a conscious decision to say, no, this is my 9 to 5. This is what I'm going to do, you know, as a living. And so starting off, you know, and even up till now, do you feel any, you know, did you feel or still feel any pressure or pushback from family, friends, you know, needing to be sort of the prodigal son for you gentlemen on the bottom there? Like, what, you know, can you talk us through a little bit, you know? And again, Terra, I know maybe you didn't have that necessarily, but anything on your end?
Well, actually, so I call my parents like unicorns because like they're just so far from the norm. I actually was talking about this with my friend and then my mother and my mom the other day, and one of my friends, she, like my soul sister, like we grew up at TAS, which is the Taipei American School together. She wanted to be a pro surfer, and she got so much pushback from her parents. They were just like not okay with it. They made her stay and get her degree in psychology and then her master's in psychology. And it's funny, like now, you know, she's about to graduate and and her dad's reminding her like, you got to pay back the bank of daddy, you know, it's time. And she told me recently that she's always been very jealous of how my parents always supported like my dreams in all of its unconventionality. So that's just something that I've been incredibly lucky and grateful. I'm incredibly grateful to have like these two unicorns as my parents, where they don't care about the social norm in Asia, and they don't care about me finding a conventional job as a lawyer, a doctor, a mathematician, you know, whatever. They just want me to be happy and healthy. So yeah, I could definitely see the just like the mirror between my parents supporting me and hers. Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Sorry, I want to chime in real quickly. What's interesting, and you said about your parents not caring about the social norms, because I think a lot of times when we talk about this thing, it's like, they're also getting judged, right? Like from their peers when you decide to do, or like when we all decide to go down these paths, like they're also having to hear the chatter, and there's always chatter, right? There's always chirping. So it's really, I think that's fascinating, and it's really, to your point, like that is not just unicorns, but like courageous on their part, right? To have that type of confidence in like wanting my kid to do what they want to do.
Totally. And it kind of speaks to like just, you know, again, like my parents are unicorns. They like don't really care what other people say as well. But yeah, I definitely see that being a huge factor.
Well, that's great. I mean, I feel like, you know, the gentleman on the bottom, myself, we're all dads now. I'd be curious to hear your take on how you think you're going to treat your child as people who love sports and unconventional careers. I know I have my take, but Marshall, why don't you talk about your experience, and if you want to
Yeah.
add on in terms of passing the baton forward to your two
Yeah.
kids, like, you
Yeah.
know, what your thoughts are on
I
that.
it's crazy, Brian. You were almost like reading my mind. You know, I think it's on the surface. I think for me also, it's easy to say, same thing as Tara said, my parents are unicorns. But something that even Carrie said earlier, what you said, it was interesting because, you know, you could be surrounded by other people who look like you, but still not feel like you belong. You know, you had that lonely experience, which is so ironic, right? And you didn't find that until you went to Wyoming and Alabama. And for me, again, for my brother and sister, we were the only Korean Americans in Springfield. So it's like what you found in your later life, like I had to find that at 10, right? Um, and when I reflect on it, I have a lot of empathy for what just not my parents, but other Asian parents must have gone through when they see that there's a we don't, it's the same thing what Brian had said, like, you know, this panel doesn't happen 20 years ago. Well, there were Asian athletes. Michael Chang existed. Christy Yamaguchi existed. You know, like there were the like you say, like when you're Bruce Lee piece, there are those iconic people, just a handful of them. And and the time has changed now where, you know, LeBron is way more active. He's much more of an activist than Michael Jordan ever was, right? We've all learned to find our voice in that. For me, I think the tricky part is I relate to my other Korean American friends who, like my wife's father is a doctor, and now he's of the age where he wants to pass on his practice, but he's allowed his 3 children to go and pursue their own field. So now he has no one to pass that baton down to, right? Everything that his generation told him as an immigrant was the thing to do. Now the time has changed where now he has nowhere to go and give that away to. And I think to myself, I'm going to just be like my parents and I'm going to let my children choose. And what I realized is that I sacrificed so much to get to this point in my career, just as the previous generation of immigrant parents have done for us. If my son doesn't, and I'm not that crazy dad, I don't think I'm LeVar Ball or, you know, but what I realized is, you know, I had a moment when, again, I talk about USA basketball, when you know, a couple of years ago, when my son was 8 and he's in the locker room watching Zion Williamson or watching, you know, the future NBA stars, and where he's in the locker room having access to that, I can only dream of. And I know that if, should he choose to go into it, I can open doors for him that will give him the head start that none of us had. And I sit there and go, if he chooses to go be a snowboarder, will I approve? Will I have that courage to do it? Because in the Korean sense, the word is akawo. It's like, oh, that's a shame. What a waste, right? But that's what, you know, for at least those of us who get to pursue, that's another level of courage and faith and belief in your child that, you know, I think is necessary. And we give our parents flowers for that. But you say that, Brian, and I don't know what's gonna happen. Like my son, his basketball mind is like so advanced. Like I would have him be my point guard right now if I could, you know, but physically he's not ready. But you know, his mind is already there, you know, and so what I realize is now I have the next 8 years to figure out, like, how do I help him find his own path and sit back and, you know, make his journey. But it as more time passes, it makes me more empathetic and appreciative.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think what you had mentioned about, like, as time passes, being more appreciative, because I find like that for me is been a huge journey. Because when I grew up, and I did not have like the supportive unicorn parents. I love my parents. They're not going to be watching, but yo, I love y'all. Thank you, everything. And because of them, I was given certain privileges that allowed me to pursue journalism. Because I will be honest with you, I always knew the privilege that I had growing up is that if I failed, I moved back home. And guess what? I ended up moving back home sometimes, and it sucked. But like I knew I wasn't going to be out on the street, and that was a privilege that I had, right? So a huge shout out to all the sacrifices that all parents are doing out there to enable their kids are these career paths, right? I don't know, Brian. I'm very curious about your take. I'm not sure. I would love. Ideally, I want to support my kid. So I have a 2-year-old, so I got a lot of time. I got a 2-year-old boy, and I want to support him and just help him do whatever he wants to do as he grows. What I will say is the sports media landscape is changing a lot, and I want to make sure that just like I want to make sure he doesn't have to struggle, right? Like all parents, we don't want their kids to struggle. We want them to enjoy life, but also not struggle. So I'm so early in that path, but I would also be to be totally truthful. And it's gonna go against like the concept of this panel, but I'm like, if you want to go into sports journalism, I will support you, but you have to know you are bracing yourself for a very difficult journey. And the things like when I was living in Wyoming, like I was making $19,000, right? I was eating ramen all the time. I got a raise in Alabama and I was making $30,000, right? Like, and this was, I was past 30 and I was still like, if we're talking about, and then those, when we talk about Terra, like our parents and the chirping, my parents were chirping and they were hearing from their friends, like, your kid, he's 30 now, he's single, what's he doing? He's living in Alabama. And I'm like, so that's all stuff that you got to deal with, right? And then you, like, I think as you guys as athletes, you channel that, right? You channel that and make that into motivation and find ways to, and I did the same, but it's not an easy journey and it is very tough. So that's one of the things that I wholeheartedly, and just like y'all, like you warn your kids, like it seems glamorous, but boy, it's not, right? Like it looks like it's one thing and it's not. And I would support in any way because I think the representation matters so much, but I also have to be totally honest. Like, I don't know at this point, right? It's so early. So Brian, like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that our generation, having lived through the experience of choosing these difficult paths, if our children decided they wanted to do something similar, of course, you've got to, as a good parent should, tell them the pitfalls, the challenges that they're going to face, the heartache and failures, like warn them, prepare them. But I think as Marshall said, like the empathy that we've developed, having, gone through this, and, we're our generation passing the baton to the next, from our parents, like, yeah, if my kid wanted to like go be an LPGA player or be a doctor, what would I say? I would totally leave it up to them. I mean, I do want to expose her to sports. I do want, I like the idea of being, around competition and that kind of thing. And she's only 3, but she's demonstrated an aptitude. She loves, every time she sees a ball, she's like,
the two of you, by the way, you got a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And you're already talking about aptitude, Marshall. Like Tiger dads over here. Holy smokes.
Yo, this was framed incorrectly. Yo, we got pumped into this question. I did at least. I was framed.
She's shown an aptitude. Wait, there's a question. I'm sure it's got to be somebody who's.
I know. No, I know. We'll come back in 5 years and see where we are. But I hear you, Carrie. I think, I think it's easier said than done, right? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna let my kid do anything they want, but when it comes time, like, how will we really respond? I'd like to think that, we'll be more open-minded, again, because we've lived this difficult path that we've chosen. Rewarding, I hope, right, for all, but difficult. And I would leave it up to her to decide, but
I'm curious, like for Terra and Marshall as athletes, right? Where you showed like was there something very early where your parents, like Terra, like as a figure skater, right? Did your parents identify something like, oh snap, she's got a lot of talent in here. We want to encourage and like nurture that, right? And same with you, Marshall, from a hoop standpoint. But like for me, this is different, right? Because it's a different field. But from an athletic standpoint, that's stuff that you can identify. I'm curious, was that like the case?
I mean, for me with figure skating, like I have this like weird talent of progressing really fast, especially when I start something, because I kind of have this next level like discipline, drive, determination, and I'm like determined to outwork everyone else who's at the rink or on the mountain or whatever. So my parents they like kind of knew this about me, so they knew whatever I decided I wanted to do, like that's like all I wanted to do. If let's Here's an example. We went on a family vacation to Hawaii when I was younger, and they went on all the adventures and stuff, and I sulked in the room because there was no rink in Hawaii, and I just like watched like Sasha Cohen and Michelle Kwan like videos of that, and just like I'm not at the rink. And of course now I'm like, what am I doing? But they knew that whatever I decided I was gonna do, like that was like my full commitment, full send, and I was going to progress well. So it didn't really matter that I showed an aptitude, because I proved to them within the first like week or two when my progression just went like that. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, for sure. Marshall, were you like the same? Like from a hoop standpoint?
I mean, it was a different era, early 90s, right? Like I played multiple sports. I wasn't specializing in anything. And so no, my parents were too busy to pay attention to. They were just grateful that I was keeping myself busy between the seasons. But I think kind of what Terra says resonates for me is like, I think professionally I've gotten to, I don't know if this answers the question again, but I had people, it wasn't my parents, because they didn't know the industry, right? But so what I think I find myself, I think I was able to progress in my field because I was seeking out acknowledgement from coaches who have done it before. So I think there is that searching process that many of us go to. And again, if it's so weird because it's just the four of us talking and we don't know who's watching, but I hope that there's at least one person who tuned in because they were interested in coaching that would seek me out after this, because I had to do that and I didn't have people that looked like me to do it with, right? But that was okay too. I had, whether you were a black or white coach or whatever, if they saw the talent in me and I was blessed enough to have somebody acknowledge it, that was a shot in the arm that I needed to push on. And for somebody to just come up to me, watch me work on a court, not saying anything about my race, but just come up and say, man, you can coach. And I've had just enough of those moments to sustain me on those days when it was long and hard. And again, I think that's why I'm standing here today. I would imagine there's a lot of other Asian American coaches in whatever field, not just basketball, but what Eugene Chung just went through. You're not the right minority. I fortunately, I haven't heard that said to my face yet. I know that's been said about me behind the scenes, right? And that's when I go, well, do you know me? Do you know that I spent 12 years in inner city New York and Baltimore, that I know the asset that we have as Asian Americans being able to go back and forth? And do you know what you're missing out on? But, I think fortunately I've had really just significant mentors who've said the right things to me at the right time.
I think that's a good segue into the next question, actually, Marshall. But before I ask it to the panel, Terra, in Hawaii, there is an ice rink. I just want you to know that.
I wish I'd known.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Hawaii, and I've found all the nooks and crannies of it. And there's an ice hockey league there, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, so, but I'm going to actually give this one to Marshall to continue your momentum in terms of what you just started talking about. How has your race been a factor in your journey professionally? Do you recall any moments of outright rejection or discrimination because of it? You just mentioned nothing's been said to your face, but there's been things like even microaggressions, right? Or other incidences and that you might have seen. And perhaps you can even share in the context of, for those who are considering perhaps a coaching career. First of all, I think Marshall, one day, do not be surprised to see this man on on the NBA Division I level stage as a coach. This man has the goods. I'm very confident of that, and I'd be willing to bet the house on it. But there's an Asian something called the Asian Coaches Alliance, I think, Marshall, right?
Asian Coaches Association. Yeah.
It's Asian. Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
So yeah, so if you can kind of talk us through all that and the challenges that you've dealt with along the way. You take that first.
Well, it's funny because I wrote some notes. Carrie, I read the latest one with Jeremy Lin, the article on it, and you talk about, what is it? You go from conformity, just 5 stages, right?
Yeah.
So conformity, and then you got dissonance and appreciation, resistance and immersion. You go to introspection. Like I'm in full on like integrative awareness. Like I'm on stage 5, man. I've been there the last 4 years, I think. And so what I mean by that is like, you even mentioned the Asian Coaches Association, Brian, and that was started by Mike Magpayo, who was the first, I guess full is what you say, Filipino American, full Asian American, right? Obviously, Rex Walters who's half Japanese, was the first Division I head coach, and so that whole awkward conversation had to take place when Mike became the interim and then now the permanent head coach at UC Riverside. But when he started it, it was my first year at a University of Portland, not Portland State, by the way. That's the Vikings, Brian. The Pilots, where Eric Spoelstra, another pioneering Asian American coach, played. But yeah, so that's where I was on the coaching staff. And that was the first year when the Final Four was taking place. Mike had started this Asian Coaches Association. And it wasn't, and again, I don't fault my colleagues on that coaching staff, but when I said, hey, I'm going to go to this Asian Coaches Association, and they joked like, how many of you guys are going to be there? Maybe like 6 or 8. And it's the joke that hurts because it's true, right? There really were only 5 or 6 Asian Americans, who were on the Division I coaching staff. But what I remember that was really powerful when I went was, at the time, again, we talk about allies, and we talk about people who see you for the value that bring, not from your skin color or your background. Kyle Smith, who was Mike's, head coach at Columbia University, like he brought his whole staff. So the room was filled with 20, again, 5 or 6 people who were Asian Americans on the staff, but it was surrounded by other allies who were like, we see you, we support your movement. And then fast forward 6 or 7 years, and now it's this big thing, right? And so again, it's a reminder that these things happen really fast, and that what we can achieve in the next 6 or 7 years in the state of this awareness that we have, Carrie, right? Great things. But talking specifically about race, I've always taken it as, I had another a mentor of mine who was African American coach, been in the D1 world for a long time. I said, hey, like, what's it going to look like when they step into the gym and I'm the only Asian in the gym recruiting? And what he would say to me is, hey, man, it's okay to be different, but you better be good. It's okay to be different. But if you're going to be different, and again, I talked even about my students, right now, they're more fragile and more resilient than ever. And I think it's the same thing. Like, if you're different, you have a chance to really like stand out even more and accentuate that difference as an asset. Versus like, if you're different and you're not good, then it's quicker for society to disregard you and put you to the sidelines. So I think that's where, again, my motivation is like same thing as Terra said. Like, I don't think I worked as hard when I was playing basketball or playing soccer or tennis, but I know, like, I watch more film than everybody. I spend more time on the court than anybody. Like, I know that no one's going to outwork me because I already know I have a built-in disadvantage being different. For now, maybe later on our differences will be celebrated, but for now, that's where we're at.
How about go back up to Terra? How's your race been a factor in your journey, and have there been any, incidences or memories for you where that, what came into play as you pursued a career on the slopes?
Honestly, like snowboarding, I've been very lucky again because snowboarding, competing on like the world circuit is you're kind of in this little bubble. Um, Everyone is from everywhere. So it's a very international, like there isn't really like any sort of discrimination or, you know, because like my friend Claudia, she represents Slovakia, and then like my friend Panka, Hungary. And yeah, so I've been very lucky that race hasn't been that big of a factor in deterring me, in unmotivating me at all pursuing this career and along this path. If anything, I would just say that like being able to represent my country has just given me more opportunity. Just like, because like if I wanted to represent the States, for example, I'd be competing with like everyone, all the snowboarders in the States, but paving my own lane for Taiwan, it just like gives me more opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I've had a not similar path to in that regard, Tara. Race has very much been in the forefront of my journey. And you could call it microaggressions, but for instance, for the longest time, and I think there's still a bit of this when it comes to broadcast news representation, and especially in on a sports team, but a sports news team. If there is one Asian person at a TV station, I can't work there. Like there's only, it's this old antiquated mentality of not even quotas. It's like, it's tokenism. It's like, okay, that's your one, let's move on, right? And so you don't even have that opportunity. That's gotten better in certain markets. But when I first started off, I had all sorts of, and some of these are not like woe is me type situations, but for a lot of Asian men, you look younger. In the business of journalism, that comes with credibility, right? So then if you look younger, it doesn't matter how well you know your material, people from afar are going to look at you as if you don't know what you're talking about. It's a baked in, unconscious bias. So there were all sorts of issues trying to get into the business for me, in terms of dealing with all these microaggressions. And partially, to be honest with you, like when I was working behind the scenes in Los Angeles, and I joked about Wyoming going so small, like, I mean, pardon my language here, I knew my shit was good. Like, because exactly what Marshall and Tara said, like everybody here, and it wasn't Asian folks, because Asian folks aren't in that room. Everybody was like, your shit is good. You just need that opportunity. And I knew, I was like, I'll go to Wyoming. And so I play, I have the jokes, but I knew once I went to Wyoming, once I started working on that stuff, you can't stop me. Like my material is better than you over there, and then you over there. And this sounds arrogant, but why do I feel that way? Because just like Tara, just like Marshall, just like Brian, like we work on our craft. I'm looking at what other people are doing. I'm using that. I'm learning and I'm trying to grow. But in that regard, still, because especially in the sports space. So now when I'm out there interviewing, not Marshall, right? But if I'm in there with basketball and people looking, oh, there's that Asian dude. What's the Asian dude know about basketball? All these baked in microaggressions and unconscious biases that we're all products of from a systemic standpoint, right? It's not like, and it's everybody. We all have these biases, but because we all have those, then you have to work harder to get past them. And so even in NFL circles, at the NBA, like I would be in those rooms and I would have to study more because I knew like I have to work harder than Joe Schmo over here, right? Because Joe Schmo might get the benefit of the doubt. And that's me saying this as a man. As a woman, it's even worse, right? You get even less credit. And then like, so it's always one of these things where we, maybe it's a cultural thing about that work hard mentality of outworking each other. But I will say like, it is something that has constantly been on the forefront in my path, being Asian American, because it's one of those situations when it's always like, hey, we only have enough room. You have to go above and beyond to prove that we can have like more than one person.
Man, I need what you just said distilled into a little clip that can go viral because I'm fired up right now, Carrie. In fact, it's again, you guys are. I didn't even send you the questions before, so Carrie, you're like reading my mind here, because the next question, this sort of dovetails right into it. Is the movement and the moment that we're having right now as a community. I think that, personally, I've spent my entire, adult life fighting, for representation, fighting for a seat at the table, fighting for, in my line of work, like just three-dimensional characters on screen, right? That have a heart, a soul, a mind, and not just a caricature, a prop, a device, a one-dimensional, perpetual foreigner, you know, and right now there's this national conversation happening, you know, that has been spurred on by horrible, you know, acts of hate, horrible, previous presidential administration, all of these things that have come to a head here in 2020, 2021, that where I think there's even people within our community and many people at that, for that matter, who didn't even realize, you talk about growing up self-hating or what, however you termed it, who didn't even realize that we were, as Asian Americans in this country, or Asians really around the world. Tara, you grew up in Taiwan. You straddle, different cultures and places, but I'm sure you can relate to this, where we accepted the fact that we were an invisible minority. We accepted the fact that it was like, okay, we're adjacent to this. We keep our head down. We work hard. We don't cause any trouble. We have a pretty good life. We're living the American dream. But it feels like this rug has been pulled back and the spotlight has been flooded down on all of the issues that we weren't even aware of, right? And so I want to know from each of you what you individually make of this moment that's happening right now. I know a lot. You have all been, as again, the nails that stick out in your communities, like for choosing to do what you do. So you're already doing something different. So you're probably aware at a young age or early on in your life that you're already, a lot of these things are second nature to you. But like seeing this now being talked about on a mainstream level, being talked about even in the NBA circles, in professional sports arenas. Like again, why don't we start with you, Marshall? Like, what do you make of this right now?
You see that lane. Sorry, I'm going into a coaching cliche. You see the lane, you gotta go. You got, if you're open, you gotta shoot. Like, right, Tara? Like, if you gotta, I don't know what you're doing in snowboarding, but you gotta flip, you gotta flip. Like, if that moment comes, like, you gotta take it. I had this really wise coach say to me, he had coached here for 40 years, one of the winningest high school coaches here in the state. And he said, over the course of a 32-minute high school game, there's always a moment, there's a back and forth. There's always a moment where the game breaks and the game is there for the taking. And it's never the big things, right? And Carrie, you called many games where you've seen this prepping, right? It's not the fancy shot, it's the box out. It's a 50-50 ball that goes into the wrong, possession arrow. It's the little things, 2 or 3 things that add up, and the minute has passed and all the momentum is on the other side and the game is over. And there could be 8 more minutes left to play. There could be a minute left to play. But when that moment comes in the 32-minute game and you miss that moment, you're done. There's a time when you have to take the game. It's there for the taking. And so for me, like, I have a sense of urgency like I've never had before. And I do think there's part of it also is fatherhood does that to you, and again, like Asian don't raisin, I guess is the term, like I just learned that a year ago. I'm 45 on Monday. I'm halfway
Gold
to
don't
90.
fold. That's another
Gold
one.
don't fold. That's a good one too. Ooh,
I never heard that one.
Oh, that's good. See, that's why we all tuned in, everybody. I'm writing it down. Gold don't fold. That's bad grammar. But yeah, I just think I have a sense of urgency that if we can't let this moment pass, and if we don't speak up, if we don't do the things that we need to do to be seen, then we've done our children a disservice.
Tara?
Shoot that shot, fellas, ladies.
I think it's great that this, like, I mean, it's not great that we have this issue, but it's great that we have the awareness and this platform now to address this issue. And I feel like coming from the other side where I didn't have to deal with it so much within my sport, I will say that, like, when I'm like constantly, like, my friends are like, don't be an egg, like yellow on the inside and white on the outside. And then, you know, the other side tell me don't be a banana, white on the inside. Wait, did I say that right?
Yeah, you got
Anyways,
that.
it's reverse. But I've always, you know, it's to the point where I kind of like, I almost like disassociate a little bit with the Asian part of my culture. You know, I don't see someone, I don't really like even notice anymore when I don't see people like Asians representing me. And I think that it's important that we have this time, like, to bring to dive into these subjects and hopefully have people like us representing and setting the example for other people, so that, like, people can really readily identify and, like, you know, and see us on the screen and be like, I want to be like them, I can be like them, you know, there's a pathway right there, let's do it.
Yeah, I think of a quote a lot from the movie Braveheart, which of course is now from a racist dude, right, as time has told. But at the time, the quote in Braveheart that really stuck to me was, we're so busy fighting for the scraps from Longshanks the king from his table, we've forgotten our God-given right for more. Brian, you hit it nail on the head. We've been accepting minimalization for the longest time because we didn't even expect to be given more, right? Like, why? And part of that, there's so many reasons why that's baked into our psyche. And part of that is like the immigrant mentality of when you come here, right? Like, and you fought and all the sacrifices you've made, so you don't want to make these big waves. But now what I'm so proud of is not just the younger generations who are confident and not worried about, like, hey, I have to worry about assimilating or anything like that. I belong here. I deserve to be here. I don't care what you say, right? I love that. But I also love what older generations are doing now. They are speaking up as well, that they haven't, I'm seeing these reactions from, like, this guy reached out to me. He's like, I'm 65-year-old Korean guy, and I'm talking about things that I've never talked about before. And that is the stuff that I absolutely love, because that's all of us working together to raise awareness about where, like, that we do matter, right? Like, that we deserve a place in this conversation when we're talking about all these things. And the fact that all the different generations and all of us are uniting amidst this hate, it does provide, like, light at the end of the tunnel. But to your, Marshall, like, 100%, we have to capitalize on this moment, because I will tell you from a media standpoint, these stories will get old, quote unquote, right? And they will cycle out of the news, and we won't be talked about as much. And so we need to make sure that we take advantage of this moment so that we continue to be in the constant national conversation. And that's supporting the different so many different organizations, even this organization, supporting all these different Asian American associations. And also, though, Brian, this is something that we've talked about a lot, not just Asian folks. When we're talking about racial equality and equity, like, we have to fight for everyone. We have to fight for the Black community. We have to fight for the Latinx community, because we all are fighting together, and we need to unite in that regard. And that's something where, as an Asian American, and I had very difficult conversations with, like, members of my family about, like, the historical anti-Blackness and those types of sentiments. But we have to start having these courageous conversations, be self-aware and listen, so that we can all move forward. And I hope we do that right now, and I think we are.
100%, Sherry. I couldn't have said it better. I know that on a personal note, like you, I'm, the silver lining in all this trash that's happening is that, I'm having conversations with my parents too about these things for the first time at my old age. And it's, I can only imagine what else is happening out there. And so this ripple effect and what, a lot of people have woken up to at this stage in life, it's better late than never, to all of your points, like seize this opportunity. I don't necessarily agree. I know there's a school of thought where it's like, well, we don't want your pity now, or we don't want your Johnny come lately, like, savior attitudes, because where have you been? We've been here. Well, if you're going to play like that and, take your ball and go home, I just don't think we're never going to advance as a society. So yeah, no, I definitely echo that. And so we're running out of time here, but I guess one last question before we potentially open it up to the public, if we still have time. As a parting question, what do each of you hope to accomplish before your careers are over? And what's your hope for the next generation of Asian Americans who might want to follow in your footsteps or choose a career specifically in the sports world? So why don't we start with Terra?
I just really want to show that it's possible, like we discussed all of those barriers to Asian American athletes. Like I really want to be like a role model, like show them they can do it because I've done it. Show that it's a viable pathway and all of that stuff. Like I'd really like to inspire people to be able to know that they can do it, and and that the world will conspire to help them do it.
Awesome. Marshall?
I want to help Jeremy Lin kick down some doors for the next generation. How do we do that? Jeremy already. Can we make that happen? You said earlier that and Brian's funny, by the way. When I left University of Portland, he gave me a hard time because he wanted me to carry that flag and be that first Asian American Division I head coach. But there's a trap in that destination chase, right? Like I love what Tara said, because she didn't I almost was like, gold medal, right? Gold medal. Like, we get caught up in our destination and we forget like everything that we've achieved. And again, we talk about how things change over time. I would, like 10 years ago, I would have killed to be in this position because, Brian, to push back, if I wanted to be a Division I assistant coach, I could do that today. If I want to get onto an NBA coaching staff, I have enough contacts, I built enough equity and respect in what I do that I can hop on in a G League staff somewhere and I can do that grind all over again, like Carrie did. I could end up in Alabama, the G League team somewhere. I'm too old for that. What I've been telling my guys all this week, the high school group, that we're trudging through a 1-3 record. Our mind candy, our thought of the week is get over yourself. It's what Greg Popovich says all the time. Get over yourself. It's not about you. And so when I turn the mirror back on myself and I think about all the connections that I have, and one of the live questions was from John Wong, and he was talking about mentorship. And so how do I mentor the next generation of Asian American coaches? How do I mentor and empower and coach the next generation of Asian American players? I think that's where my focus is. And if I continue to excel, if I continue to, win the respect of those in my profession, then that just means I can open that door just a little bit wider. And so that's my motivation today.
I love that. And I would echo the same things about mentorship. And I know I was talking smack about about my kid following my path, but one of the things that I'm so proud of is helping start an Asian American sport within the Asian American Journalists Association in the Sports Task Force, which we create a group of us created. And when Marshall, you're saying about like Asian coaches and you were so small, like when we first started, there was like 10 of us, but we're like, we need to get together to try to create this like pipeline, right? The talent pipeline. So what we did was we created this sports task force. And please, if there's any panelists out there who are interested in sports journalism, the sports profession, reach out to us, and we will connect, and we can get you, let you become a part of this mentorship that we started. And what we did with this mentorship, and I love telling this story, and I even talked to the guy earlier today, but it's about giving opportunities, right? Like the opportunities that we didn't have, and giving new generations some of those tools. So like we have this kid from Illinois State. Now, for those in the journalism world, you know, like people go to Syracuse, Northwestern, like Missouri, and they're amazing schools and they turn out amazing talent. But there's more talent than just in those places. And we had this kid from Illinois State, which is not very heralded. And we saw the talent in him, and we gave him the potential, like, and we matched him with mentors and so forth. But we offered the opportunity. We didn't do anything for him, right? Like we didn't say, we're going to write this thing for you. Man, you do that on yourself. You have to earn this mentorship, right? But giving you the opportunity to meet these people and then watch you grow yourself, and then start giving you tools like having Zooms like this, where we can talk about how do you write more efficiently? How do you have more camera presence if you're in TV, right? Doing these tangible skills and offering these skills to others who have had the benefit of maybe generational contacts or networks or so forth, right? That's one of the things that I'm really proud of, and that I really want, that I love what I'm seeing from all of us, is giving it, passing like that baton on to the next generation, and get to really make a bigger dent in representation, so that the ultimate goal, right, is that we don't even have to talk about this, right? Like that, I mean, truth be told, it's going to be a minute, but like, if we can get there, that is when we've really made it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm the oldest person in this room by far. And I can tell you that we've been having.
Brian, are you 86?
I mean, I got you by a couple. Yeah, I am Yoda.
Wow.
I'm I'm the epitome of gold not folding. So I've been having conversations like this for a long time, to your point, Carrie. And it's probably going to be, truth be told, carrying on for a lot longer. But I do genuinely feel there is something in the water that's different this time. I think there's several factors at play. I think that social media has changed the conversation tremendously. I think that the political climate has galvanized a lot of people. I think the fact that the world has gotten as big as it is, it's gotten smaller, right? So that information, the way it travels, the way we see what's happening in different parts of the world, the inequities, it's helping us all become more compassionate as human beings. And there's a lot of darkness out there still. There's a lot of, things that those are just never going to go away. But if we can't keep pressing forward, if we can't, as Marshall said, keep using this moment and trying to, turn lemonade out of these lemons, then what are we here for? So I just want to say, I thank all of you guys for being on this panel. You guys are all, again, trailblazers, pioneers in your respective communities and fields. I know we're going to see lots of, more aspiring, journalists, coaches, snowboarders, Olympians, great human beings. Marshall, I want to just give let folks know that, he wears so many hats. Another hat that he's going to be wearing this summer, I believe, is on the coaching staff of Kimchi Express, which is the basketball tournament that airs on ESPN. If you guys know, it's been airing for the last 4 or 5 years. Marshall,
something like that. Yeah.
I watch it because I'm a big Ohio State fan. Go Bucks! And they have a alumni team that usually does pretty well there, so it's kind of fun to watch those guys. But I did notice early on there was a team called Kimchi Express. I was like, what is this all about? And lo and behold, Marshall is joining their coaching staff this summer, so that should be fun. So please follow follow those folks. I wish we had social media links and all that on here. Terra, good luck on your journey. Well, on your recovery first, but then on your journey to Beijing 2022. And I don't know where the 26 games are being held, but wherever that is.
Yeah, I know, but I forget.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
we'll find out soon enough. And Carrie Chao, sorry for taking your seat, for this panel, because usually, like I said, you're the one doing the asking. So I'll let you take it from here from now on. But appreciate all of you guys. You guys are tremendous human beings. Thank you for celebrating Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month with us. Thank you, Chinese American Heritage Foundation, Esther and Wilson, who's behind the scenes there, I'm sure, for your dedicated effort to our community and putting this panel on. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Esther and say good night to everyone.
Well, thank you all. Don't leave. I want to look at you, all 5 of you. The conversation is incredible. All 5 of your stories, they are inspiring, valuable, and genuine. I don't know any more vocabularies I want to bring it up, but it was really touching. I appreciate all your precious time to do this webinar with us. And like what Carrie had said, we hope that maybe another 3-4 years, we'll do another webinar, and hopefully there will be more changes, or we don't even need to do a webinar anymore because we all have the equal rights. So we don't even need to share about this Stop Asian Hate anymore. So thank you again, and thank you for all the attendees. We have been recording this and we will share to the public so people can hear your voices. And have a really good night. And please go to our website, cahf.us/AAPI talks. And they will have the rest of the webinars until the end of May. So thank you again and have a great night. Thank you all panelists. You guys are the best. Thank you, Brian, for looking for all these wonderful panelists. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Thank you
y'all.
all.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.